Hello, this is a review of GTR. I just got this used in the Salvation Army store, actually, on CD, and I haven't heard it for years. I bought it when it came out on cassette in 1986. I was a teenager. I was actually a professional musician touring full-time, performing 6 nights a week in clubs. And I had looked forward to this very, very much because I'm a big Steve Howe fan, a big Steve Hackett fan. Of course, these guys are Prog legends who are both still going strong today, by the way. And they picked up 3 other additional musicians in the group. Now, just a quick backstory, looking at Wikipedia, was that Brian Lane was the manager with Steve Howe. The two of them kind of had the brainchild of having this sort of quote-unquote supergroup. They asked Steve Hackett to become part of it. I think one of the twists, or one of the interesting points of this album, was there was no keyboards. There was only guitar synthesizers. So for them to start using Roland guitar synthesizers and recording with nothing but those Roland guitar synthesizers was a neat twist. They called the band GTR, which is short for guitar, on a mixing table on the console when they're in the studio. Usually GTR means guitar, and I think that was part of the inspiration behind the name. So I got the album. I was not disappointed. I loved it at the time, and partly because I was such a Steve Howe fanatic, and I love Steve Hackett as well, and I have lots of his stuff. But this album really feels very much like a Steve Howe at the helm kind of album. Steve Hackett shines through on track 9, Hackett to Bits, and track 10, Imagining, where he's playing his classical guitar, he's playing his unique compositional style, and in fact that's the only track 9, where he wrote it alone as his track. Of course, the hit was When the Heart Rules the Mind. The vocalist Max Bacon is outstanding. He has some incredible moments on this album, and his vocals and with the lyrics too were very, very kind of iconic in a way. Now, if you want to compare what else was going on at the time in the 1986 top 40 or top 100, Mr. was big at the time. Let's see, Peter Gabriel had Sledgehammer at the time, and at the same time also Invisible Touch, Genesis, was out. So there's definitely all these prog rockers who are out and doing progressive but pop stuff, progressive pop, you could say. So GTR was part of that whole gang there. Asia was just prior to this. Steve Howe left Asia. And Hackett had some solo albums, apparently just before that one, and thought, this would be a great way to keep my career going strong, So I think it was definitely a partnership, largely, but I do think that Steve Howe was driving it. Again, I said I liked the album. I loved the album when it came out. Now I'm listening to it again, and I still like it very much, but I have some critiques of it, with the benefit of hindsight being 20/20, looking back at that era. The production was the single most hampering issue on this album. Way too much reverb. The band sounds swamped in reverb, like they're playing in a large gymnasium, and things are just echoing all over the place. Fortunately, the vocals don't get lost, but all of the instruments, all the drums, the bass, it sounds like everything's just getting drowning out itself in this soup of reverberation, and it lacks the distinction, it lacks the precision that you need to hear. And you have to strain. It's like you're straining to hear all these amazing performances, and they are amazing performances. This album would benefit by a remix, a simple remix. Maybe the two Steves can get together, make a track or two as brand new ones, and then have Steven Wilson. If he remixed this, it would be so beneficial. Just clean up all of that messy reverb, and let's hear what they're playing. If it's going to be mixed properly, you're not going to feel like you need to strain to hear anything. Great playing going on this album, some great songwriting. As far as songwriting, it looks like all of the band have at least one credit, including Jeff Downes, the producer. He even wrote the song The Hunter. This is the second song, which is a good song. It is a great song. Sketches in the Sun is just Steve Howe. It's a solo piece where he wrote it sounds like he's playing a 12-string guitar, and it's the drop with a drop D, and it's a beautiful song. Then you've got track 9, Hackett to Bits, which is Steve Hackett solo piece, very, very much hearkening to all his best of his solo albums. It's a great song. Once again, it could really stand to be remixed. And then Imagining, it sounded almost like it was a continuation of his solo piece, but it was a piece that was written by more in the band, and it had some more... Oh, it's just very interesting. I find side 2 super great. Super great. I love side 2. Side 1, very good. Very good. I mean, the hit When the Heart Rules the Mind was a top 20 hit in the United States. I remember the video was playing, and I was really proud that my favorite guitarists were up there and doing some good, successful stuff again. So, I mean, I have good feelings about the whole album, other than the drowning and reverb. Apparently in track 7, Steve Howe played bass, so I'm going to go review that again. I want to hear, okay, what's so special about Steve Howe playing bass in that song? It'd be interesting to hear what's different. On his solo albums, he plays bass sometimes too. And I found when he does play bass, he's very influenced by Chris Squire, because he played on the same stage as Chris Squire for, 15 years straight or something. The bass player, Phil Spalding, great playing. There was some fretless. I wonder if that was Steve Howe when he was playing. Somewhere on this album there's some fretless, which is really good. By the way, it says in the back here, special thanks to Gibson Guitars. And yet what's on the cover? It's a Fender. And I actually bought this one. It was a brand new issue of a Fender that was just when they were starting to make guitars in Japan. So there's lots of gorgeous harmonies in this album. There's lots of gorgeous guitars. Steve Howe is playing some lap or steel guitar, on a stand there. So he's got some of that on this album. There's lots of classic Steve Howe kind of little riffs, because of course Steve Howe writes lots of little cool riffs. Some of them sounding almost Led Zeppelin-ish. In case I didn't mention it, Jeff Downes has produced a lot of albums from Asia, so it's an in-house job, and he also produced this album. He's a keyboardist, really, so it was a bit unusual that they would choose a keyboardist to be the producer. I think Jekyll and Hyde is a real jewel of a song. Track 8 was a slower track, and I don't know why they didn't do more slow tracks. They needed some more slow track. In fact, if I were a producer, I would have really demanded a few more intimate slow songs, because I don't know, maybe Asia was the big thing at that time, so they wanted to kind of repeat that kind of success with Asia, with lots of really anthemic, go songs, but they needed more slow stuff. And frankly, the slow stuff is really terrific. It's great to hear them. Well, you can hear them clearly, for one thing, and also there's just some real creativity that happens when this band was playing some slow music. It's kind of a shame that they didn't stay together for another album. I guess Steve Hackett was very upset because the band was in a lot of debt, and Steve Howe is to blame apparently for that, because Steve Howe is pushing for recording and taking their time in the studio and doing a really proper album in that way, whereas Steve Hackett wanted to just sort of bare bones it a little more and rely more on just the band pulling it together and getting their bootstraps up and making a great album without having to luxuriate in a studio for months. Hackett's approach probably would have worked better for the band. It just seems like sometimes when you take too much time to do something and make it all perfect, it can just I don't know. They're a good band. So overall, I'm sad that they didn't stay together for another album or two. They really could have gone a little farther, I think. So if I'm going to come up with my own system of rating an album, and I'm very hesitant to do this. I know I've got Sharky here, who's been with me for over a good year, just in the background there. He's offering his input sometimes on music. One of my Patreons suggested she liked the idea of doing shark teeth, maybe 5 out of 5 would be the perfect score. So I'm going to give, along with Sharky here, GTR, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. If there were not the overzealously added reverb, this album would be, I would say, a 4 out of 5. It was a pretty strong album. So Sharky, thanks for the help. I'm curious what you thought of the album. Leave a comment below and what you thought of my review, and if you like it or not. And I can definitely recommend this. It's a piece of prog history of 80s, 80s prog. It's just one more piece in that puzzle that sort of shows you the bigger picture of what happened to prog and from the 70s, bridging over through the 80s and into the 90s, and it's all part of prog history. So if you have a suggestion as well, an album you'd like me to review, leave a comment below and tell me what album that would be. So, spiraling out, it's Dean. Talk to you all later.